we can see in the world today, there's a spirit of Antichrist, going against Christ, against the church. It finally achieves its form, its incarnation, like it were, and it's one man who will come at the end and do many of the very same things that Christ did. Will be some kind of demonic marvel.
Hello, friends. We are so back. Welcome to the Reversion. I'm Anthony Westgate, as you know, and it's good to be back. I have been incredibly locked in doing things for the forum that is basically launched. I haven't kind of officially launched it, whatever even that means, but you can go see it at permanent.xyz. Permanent, which is right here. Nothing too exciting going on right now, but we do have some exciting stuff. I did my first official quote release, I guess, of a large collection of artwork here. So, if you know how to download torrents or whatever, you can go and grab yourself a 15 gigabyte collection of fine art. But we're not here to talk about this tonight. I'm just showing you what I've been up to. I have not been following the current thing. I haven't been monitoring the situation, but what I did see, what I did notice, how could you not notice that we had our friend Jay Dyer on Tucker Carlson talking about a lot about Protestantism and Orthodoxy. I would say a lot more about Orthodoxy, but reflecting on, some of the lesser known historical aspects of what influenced the Protestant Reformation, things that I've been covering for almost 2 years now. And so I was very pleased with the fact that he even kind of put some breadcrumbs out there for people to hopefully take a deeper dive into this. He mentioned Rosicrucianism. He mentioned nominalism. That was kind of a hot button that was making the rounds, or still is rather, on X. You can see all these prots just completely crashing out over the claim that Luther was a nominalist. We're going to get into a little bit of that. This won't be just another, yet another commentary on the entire interview. I just kind of wanted to at least maybe just start things off, just touching on some of the things that I just mentioned there. He talks about the rise of secret societies, literacy, right? And I really just kind of wanted to go over, I think he even mentioned Kabbalah, like the influence of Kabbalah in the 17th century. And so I just wanted to kind of like, comment on some of that. I've got a lot of materials for this, as you probably have seen in some previous streams. I've got plenty of material to take a deeper dive on this. So I thought I would open up a panel tonight, and if anybody wanted to just kind of jump on and if you had any like questions about this particular subject, or you just wanted to talk about it, debate about it. I had a couple guys barking at me on X, and when I offered them to come join here and talk about it, they suddenly changed their tune. But you guys are always welcome to pop in, and there's the link there. But yeah, so let's get into this here. I don't remember where I left off, but I'll just kind of see what he's talking about here.
In the earliest days, Christianity had this sort of altar-based form of worship. Again, another Reformation distinctive is that they begin to move away from the idea of an altar towards a table, right? So you have sort of a desacralizing of the worship space to not be a Eucharistic offering, but a shared meal, and we're not totally opposed to the idea of it being a shared meal, but it's first and foremost a worship offering.
And so I'm already cutting this off. By the way, I do want to say congratulations to Jay. I'm really happy that this happened. This is just he did a great job on this. I really enjoyed the talk, and I thought he nailed it. The fact that he caused such a stir says a lot. And we're gonna go over some of the responses too, which were actually hilariously proving this nominalist kind of mindset. But yeah, Nightmare says, you're the first person I thought of when he mentioned Luther's Kabbalah influence. Yeah, just to be fair, I know that I'm kind of like the one, I guess, due to my articles and various streams that have focused on this. I guess I've become known for this, but I don't want to take credit for like being the one to kind of like expose this or whatever. Like, this has been known for many years. I think it's just maybe newer to the Orthodox world because, it's a Western phenomenon, for one, and then two, it's been covered extensively by Catholic historians, some Protestant historians. I know Francis Schaeffer has covered some of the influence of Christian Kabbalah in the particular reformers like Zwingli. So this isn't something that I would ever take credit for. And I don't know if Jay has seen my work particularly about this, but it doesn't matter. Like I said, the same thing when Jonathan Pajot covered this on his podcast. Like it doesn't actually matter to me if they found this kind of rabbit hole through my work or not. I'm not looking for credit for this. I don't need any of that. I just am glad that it's getting out there, whether, these people come to this conclusion on their own or, otherwise, it does not matter to me. But I'm glad to talk about it. And this is kind of like, I need stuff like this to happen for these discussions to enter the mainstream discourse, because it motivates me to get back on track with my book. Like I said, I was pretty sidetracked with doing this other project. But so the reason I paused it here was Jay's talking about this shift that happened from the sacralization of the altar into what he's talking about, like this kind of collective gathering around the table in terms of the Eucharist. And I've talked about this on a previous stream. I think it was the one about Judaizing or textual Judaizing in the Reformation. You can read about this in the work of, it's called the Reformation of the Image by, I always forget this scholar's name. It's a fantastic book, though. Kroner, Joseph Leo Kroner. And he makes the argument that what actually, like the shift that Jay's talking about here, it actually was extended into the sacralization of the text itself. So like Protestants or the Reformers, even during the time of the Reformation, there was all this iconoclasm. They were, gutting the churches from all the sacred images, and they literally replaced it with text, with inscribing biblical passages in textual form on the walls of the churches, on the altars themselves. They had, Bible passages on the altars. And so you see this shift happen where now the text is elevated to this like sacramental status. So yeah, I'll keep it moving here.
You go back to Abraham. Abraham built an altar. God is always worshipped at an altar, at least the biblical God. So for us, the Reformation then represents a form of turning away from that. It's a form of sort of Judaizing. It's a form of returning to a form of rabbinical theology. And many of the reformers were actually very influenced by rabbinic theology, by the Talmud even. So the Reformation has a stream of influences, Renaissance humanism, all those things play into that. And it's just very...
Well, Luther was not in that category, though. No?
He was not... through Super Chat.
Thank you, Ortho Bell.
Thank you for the wealth of knowledge you bring.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the very generous support, Ortho Bell. I'm happy to bring whatever is in my crazy schizo head to you guys. I just have, I have to come up with like more content. Like I said, I've been so locked into building this other thing I'm doing. I really need to get back to the streaming content and written content, especially on the Reversion on Substack. So, but I'm glad that you've been enjoying. Thank you very much there. So what he's saying here, and actually Tucker's response,
Judaizing, it's a form of returning to a form of...
This is the comment, like, I'm glad Tucker said this actually, because this is by far the number one, 10 out of 10 times you're going to hear this response. Anything involving Judaic influence, rabbinic influence, Judaizing, when it comes to the Reformation, Luther especially, this is the response you get.
Theology. And many of the reformers were actually very influenced by rabbinic theology, by the Talmud even. So the Reformation has a stream of influences, Renaissance humanism, all those things play into that. And it's just very...
Well, Luther was not in that category, though. No?
He was not interested in...
Yeah, so what he's referring to, obviously, what is Luther known for? On the Jews and Their Lies, right? Which he wrote towards the end of his life. I believe it was the second to last book that he published. He was in very poor health at that point. He had spent his entire life evangelizing the Jews, and he became very weary from that, as understood, right? That's like understandable. And that's not to say he was a Philosemite his whole life, right? But he did, what people fail to mention is this book here. What is it called? It's like Jesus. It's something like Jesus. Jesus Christ was born a Jew. This book here. Look at this. So they always leave this out, that he wrote this closer to the this was 1523. On the Jews and Their Lies was later on, I think in the late 1530s, I believe. Right? Maybe I forget what year he died. Anyway, they never bring this up. And this is not a Philo-Semitic text either. I'm not trying to argue that. He actually, I believe, had a pretty well-rounded approach where he was condemning Severus, for example, for his very aggressive anti-Semitism where he was like literally persecuting Jews, and he was just, Luther was kind of taking this like middle ground approach and saying, we shouldn't be persecuting them, like you need to calm down with that. So like the Severus, I would say, was the like undisputed anti-Semite of that time. You can probably see something in this article here about that. Servetus, yeah. So he challenged the doctrine of Servetus Judaeorum, servitude of the Jews. I don't know if it has that part about him, but anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a whole article on it, right? So like, this is what people think of. They're like, this whole premise on its face sounds absurd, because obviously Luther was this raging anti-Semite, they try to say, right? And actually, I just saw even today, right here, look at this. I was just commenting on something. Matryoshka Monarchist reposted one of my something where I'm showing all these books that, are relevant to Jay's talk. And I mean, look at this right here. Jay said the Protestant Reformation was done by Jews, which isn't true. Okay, he didn't say it was done by Jews. Martin Luther was a raging anti-Semite. So there you go. Like right there in real time, you're seeing that response, right? So this guy's dismissing this entire thing because Martin Luther wrote a book late in his life called On the Jews and Their Lies, which I'm convinced most of these people didn't even read this book. They just refer to the title because it's like, oh, base title, right? And so, I'm showing him here, like he's complaining that Jay wouldn't talk to him. I said, I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you about it. And I showed him this, which I went over this again. I'm not going to cover this because I did a whole stream on this about the dialectics between Hebraism and Kabbalah, which is very important to understand with this history, because this explains exactly what Jay's talking about with Tucker here. This explains that whole justification for like, how do you reconcile these two things, where on one hand you have Luther, who's this, let's say anti-Semite, whatever even that means, whatever people even mean by that, not sympathetic towards Judaism, let's say it like that. And then on the other hand, you have all these other reformers, whether you want to include Luther or not, I do, who were greatly influenced by Hebraism, which is, the study of like Hebraic hermeneutics, and this involved seeking counsel from rabbis in the Old Testament translations, because they had to translate the Hebrew. They didn't know Hebrew, so they had to go to the rabbis to learn Hebrew at the very least, and with that came learning the hermeneutical methods of the Hebrew language for the Old Testament. So they were learning this from rabbis. I could go into, I did a whole stream on this. I could go into great depth on this. I have a ton of scholarly reference materials for this, highlighted like crazy, like you can see here. So I've done a lot of reading on this. And, this whole dialectical tension kind of explains that whole thing, right? It's saying the view of Judaism in the early modern Christianity was highly contradictory, right? So in the first sentence, he's acknowledging that there's a contradiction. It moved between two poles: hostility towards Jews on the one hand, and philo-Semitic curiosity and interest on the other. In both cases, the matter at hand was legitimation. One more precisely, legitimation of Christianity through Judaism, and on the other hand, Judaism became the object of negative legitimation, where Christianity asserted itself on the basis of the rejection of Judaism, using theological arguments to dispute and contest Judaism while censoring, discarding, and burning books. Okay? And then he says, on the other hand, however, Judaism became the object of positive legitimation, where the validation of Christianity was not accompanied by the rejection of Judaism. Rather, it went hand in hand with efforts to integrate Judaism. So you have philological and scientific arguments that were used to explore and study Judaism, and its books were translated, published, and advocated. So again, you can go back to that stream that I did on my, let me just pull it up so you can see. If you go to my channel, it's this one here, Textual Judaizing in the Protestant Revolution. So, I did a whole 3.5 hours on this, right? So at risk of being redundant, I won't go too in depth about that unless you guys have any questions or anything about that. But so let me get back to the this very well may be an entire stream of like 7-minute segment of Jay talking here.
Rabbinic theology, but he was influenced by what's a text called the Theologia Germanica, which was a Neoplatonic text. And so there's also some evidence that scholars have pulled up that suggests that Luther might have had an interest in Hermeticism. I'm not saying that dominates his idea, but more so with Calvin and some of the Swiss reformers, they were a little more directly influenced by rabbinic theology.
And that's true. And I sent Jay, actually, a while back, I sent him this here. You can see this. Let me, I got to switch the screen share here. So this is from the book, The Influence of Judaism in Christian Reform Movement by Louis Newman, who was very well-regarded Jewish historian. And this book is an absolute beast. It's like 600, 700 pages, something like that. I have the physical copy. This is the PDF, and it's not OCR'd, so I can't highlight anything. I had to kind of scroll through to find this, but here you go. He does write on Zwingli and the Kabbalah here. So he's asking, is Zwingli acquainted with the Kabbalah? There are indications that he was familiar with certain Jewish legends or Haggadah. These, however, he may have gleaned from secondary sources. In his use of allegory and his search for Christian types and biblical personages and his repeated discovery of mysteries in the Old Testament texts, there is evidence of a desire on the part of Zwingli to apply esoteric principles to his exegesis of the Bible. And so he's saying... so here, but in the explanation of the ineffable name, the reformer appears to have borrowed from the mystical works of both Pico della Mirandola and Johann Reuchlin. Okay, these were the Renaissance humanists who were the pioneers of Christian Kabbalah. For those who don't know, Pico was kind of the first cause of this transmission. And then Johann Reuchlin further developed and advanced the ideas of Christian Kabbalah. He was much more educated in Hebrew. He wrote the Hebrew grammars that the reformers were using for their Old Testament translations. Reuchlin was also the grand uncle of Philip Melanchthon, who was Luther's right-hand man for some time at the onset of the Reformation. And that influence transmitted to both Luther to some degree and to a greater degree Melanchthon, who you also see that dialectical tension happening with him because he started preaching about a lot of these like apocalyptic esoteric ideas that he speculatively, some scholars speculate that he picked them up from Kabbalah. And then he was also, like pretty radical in his eschatology. But and then he kind of had this like love-hate relationship with, I wouldn't say love-hate relationship with Kabbalah, but like he, kind of like skated a fine line between like, this is heresy and then, this could be useful. That's my very simplistic breakdown of that. He kind of had a complex relationship with it, to be fair. But Zwingli, he's saying here, it is known that Zwingli made use of Reuchlin's Rudimenta Hebraica. That's the Hebrew grammar I'm talking about. and also followed with interest the progress of his controversy with the Dominican monks. He no doubt knew of Reuchlin's De Verbo Mirifico and De Arte Cabalistica, which was published in 1517. The latter particularly having awakened great interest in Christendom. Yeah, that was a monumental work, the De Arte Cabalistica by Johannes Reuchlin. It was highly influential. I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was the first Kabbalistic work written by a Christian, and it was highly influential even among the Jewish world. So like Reuchlin was just much higher regarded in scholarship than Pico. Pico was more of like, I wouldn't say a novice when it comes to Kabbalah, but he was learning. The thing about Pico is, and I'll probably get into this when I cover the Occult Renaissance Church of Rome by Michael Hoffman, which has been requested a bunch of times for me to cover that. I'm still working on it. It's just such a huge book. But Pico was learning Christian Kabbalah, or just Kabbalah rather, from a rabbi that was basically spoon feeding him a Christianized version of Kabbalah. And so that affirmed for Pico that Kabbalah did in fact reveal the truth of Christianity. And so that was kind of the whole presupposition for adopting and syncretizing Kabbalah with Renaissance humanism and Catholicism. And so that there's a lot on that in Michael Hoffman's book. There's an entire, I'll see if I can pull this up. There's an entire scholarly work on this called, what's the name of this? Is it this one? No. I'm trying to remember the name of this author. Here it is. Pico della Mirandola. And let me get the title here. Yeah, Pico della Mirandola's Encounter with Jewish Mysticism. And this is I believe this is the scholar who really did this groundbreaking work where he discovered that Pico's rabbi, Flavius, what was his name? I always forget this guy's name. Flavius Mithridates. That this guy was purposely corrupting the text that he was translating for Pico. And actually, I think it's kind of debated whether it was intentional or not. But interestingly, this guy Mithridates, he delivered a Kabbalistic sermon in front of, I think it was Pope Leo. So he was brought to the Vatican to deliver a sermon. For some reason, they brought in this converso rabbi, and he delivered a sermon at the Vatican, and it was full of all these Kabbalistic allegories. So yeah, anyway, I'm digressing quite a bit here, but let me get back to the video.
And Talmudism, but not so much Luther. No, Luther was very anti. I mean, he didn't even like Moses. He said, "I'd like to punch Moses' teeth out." so Luther didn't even like the Old Testament at times. But again, he's a boisterous sort of,
he certainly was
satirical character at times. So it's hard to know exactly.
The most hilarious theologian in history.
He was very hilarious. So it's hard to know exactly when he's always being literal. He might just be joking around. But no, I don't mean to mischaracterize, because I know Luther wrote about the Jews and their lies. That's a famous text that he wrote. So I'm aware of that. But just in terms of the general, trends of the Reformation outside of Luther.
Yeah, this comes up often. This I get the distrust for Tucker. I mean, does that mean I wouldn't have gone on his show? Does that mean there's any implications of like any of his guests? Like I think that's pretty wild to argue. But yes, I do know that that is true. I mean, you can see the clips where he was denying that his father was in the CIA, and then suddenly he's talking about it. I mean, yeah, that's a little bit sketchy. I don't know. I wouldn't argue that means he's he's like an intelligence asset or something. Like, I don't know what the implication is there to say that, but look, the thing is, Tucker has had on guests that are undeniably bringing up these important issues. Whether or not he's controlled op, it's like, okay, maybe. I don't. How can you prove either way unless there's like a real smoking gun? The fact is, he's talking about a lot of the same subjects that I talk about. Even like, especially with like the data centers and the technocracy, like, I appreciate that he covers that. He is kind of like taking a more like Joe Rogan approach to it, where he has all these different voices coming on, and there's no kind of like cohesive ideology being represented on his show. But I guess the positive side to that is that you get guys like Jay who are representing orthodoxy and sharing the Orthodox worldview, whether you like Jay or not. That's objectively good. I think, my personal opinion is he did a good job representing orthodoxy, explaining it through, the Protestant understanding and the differences between orthodoxy and Protestantism. I mean, this is like something that he's talked about a billion times. So he's a good voice to have for it, I think. So we're going to get into like some of the responses though from the Protestant side.
With Calvin, Zwingli, Melanchthon, even later Lutherans were very involved in the founding of Rosicrucianism. Johann Andre is believed by some scholars to be the author of the Rosicrucian Manifesto. I forget exactly what it's called, but so that is there, and a lot of that has to do with Kabbalistic ideas.
Who are the Rosicrucians?
This was an Enlightenment era secret society of sorts, which in the 1600s, 1700s, there was a lot of these that were popping up everywhere, because you still had, in Protestant countries, you had certain laws that would, and in Catholic countries as well, they would forbid participation in secret societies. They would forbid, practicing of the occult in various ways. But you also had court alchemists and people that would kind of, like John Dee, he was the, court astrologer to the Queen. So they would kind of do these things on the down low, secretly. And so you get a rise of these secret societies. This is where some of the first speculative Masonic lodges start to pop up in the 1500s, 1600s in Europe. But you also had a very interesting confluence of Hermetic and Kabbalistic groups that were popping up, particularly Spanish rabbis that were very popular in Spain seemed to be involved in some of the rise of Kabbalistic influence in the West. And that, I think, contributes in part to the Rosicrucians, who, according to, there's a great book by...
Yeah, that's literally where
Seraphim Rosario donated
Seraphim Rosario, let's go.
Through Super Chat.
No comment there. Thank you, man. I appreciate the $10, brother Seraphim. Very much appreciated. As always, thank you so much for your generous support to the work I'm doing here. Yeah, what Jay's saying here is spot on. This stuff is like, this is why I want to commend Jay, because like, it's very hard to talk about this stuff without going in depth to back up the claims, because that's something like Protestants are not familiar with it. Most people aren't familiar with this. This is very like niche knowledge. This is very like unknown history, right? And so it's safe to say like 99.9% of people viewing this are like, what are you talking about? Like Tucker didn't even know what Rosicrucians are. So like this is very niche, and in my experience, just, researching, writing, and discussing this in public, this is a common pushback you'll get from Protestants, is like they think this sounds insane. they think it sounds schizophrenic, like there was some kind of like secret society conspiracy behind the Reformation. And that is, of course, that's absurd because that was not taught in the history books, right? Now, I covered this in my article here. And I've kind of been, I think there was some time where I pulled this out because I was getting a lot of pushback on the source. And so I recently actually revised this, and maybe this is a good chance to kind of cover this here, but this is primarily covered by these two historians, German historians, Norbert Homoth and Dr. Ludwig Keller. And they wrote about how, like, basically they're arguing that the Rosicrucian order, while it's true that it was formally established in the early 17th century, so, you know, a generation after Luther, there was these like kind of currents that were developing in Luther's time. And so there were these kind of like proto-Rosicrucian lodges that were also like proto-Masonic for the same reasons. And, you know, I don't even know if they use the language proto-Masonic. I think they just explicitly call them Masonic lodges. So it could be confusing to the reader who kind of knows that Freemasonry didn't get formally established until, you know, 1717, and then Rosicrucianism, if you do know anything about it, you know that it kind of like formalized with the Rosicrucian manifestos that Jay is talking about, which were written by Valentin André, who was a, you know, kind of like a syncretic Lutheran type. I know that the Lutherans don't claim him, but you know, he was what would probably be considered a heterodox Lutheran if there were such a thing. And so basically these two guys, Homoth and Keller, are arguing that there was a proto-Rosicrucian lodge led by Luther's spiritual father, Johann von Staupitz, and he was one of Luther's primary patrons too. And so he was the head of this like Kabbalistic secret society. And the members of this lodge were also, you know, certain key supporters of the Protestant Revolution. And he names them, by the way, in this book. Let me see if I can pull this up. I think I have it here. Yeah. So let me pull up this text. This is a very rare text I'm about to show you guys. Very rare text that was translated to, this is a German text that was translated to English. And shout out to, I'm blanking on his name. You know, people, I don't remember these usernames, but you know who you are if you're tuned in. A guy in our Discord who, after reading my article, became obsessed with this you know, particular aspect of the Reformation, and went on this crazy deep dive like I did, and did the translations for this book, De Antichristo, where this is not Keller, this is Homoth. This is Homoth's text in English. So you're seeing something very rare here, but so let me make this a little bigger. But here it says, Luther was not an original thinker. Rather, for the circumstances of the time, he represented the modern liberal mindset of the Johannine secret societies, which were rooted in the Renaissance. Okay, and so he's talking about the Devotia Moderna, which was this philosophy that was being taught through the Johannine brotherhoods that were kind of like at the forefront of this fraternity in Jorgenburs. I know I'm butchering these names. Actually, if it's funny, side note, people discredit everything that that I've like written on this and like that have spoken about because I'm not saying the German pronunciations. Okay, sure. Like that's just retarded, but okay. So Jorgen Bers, I don't know. So he was he was a student there at this fraternity that advocated this devotio moderno as kind of this mystical theology, not in the Orthodox sense, but more in, I would say probably like Thaler. I think they were influenced by like Thaler, if I'm not mistaken. And this is where, by the way, as Jay mentioned, this is where he became very influenced by the Theologica Germanica, which Luther believed was written by Thaler, by the way. I know that people say Thaler didn't write it, but Luther, at least for some time, believed that Thaler was the author of it. So it says very early on, he came into contact with the Nuremberg Operations Lodge, which was to fatefully determine the further course of his life's path. This lodge was led by a certain Mr. von Stoppens. Other members, and then here he names the members. These are all supporters of the Protestant Revolution. And one of them in particular, I think it was Spengler. I don't remember. Oh, Dürer. Yeah, Albrecht Dürer. I'll show you something on him. Oh, I guess maybe he covers it here, but it says the following illustration of a first day cover from Masonic philately, postmarked in Monaco, identified. Yeah, so that's here. I don't know if it's in this text, but it's in the original. And so I have a screenshot of it. You can see right here. So I have to switch back. So you can see that here. Actually, maybe I'll just stick to mine because I kind of condensed all of what's in there, but you can see, I wanted to at least show that document. So here's about this Albert Dürer, right? Here's a Masonic postcard with his face on it, member of the Lodge Operative de Nuremberg. And so he was on the same roster as Luther at that lodge, at least in this, in this document. And so interestingly, there is a entry in the Masonic Encyclopedia, in Mackey's Masonic Encyclopedia, that has an entire article on this Albertus Dürer. So even though this guy was born in 1471 and died in 1528, there's an entry, an entire article on him in the Masonic Encyclopedia. And this is Mackey's encyclopedia, by the way. This isn't like some fringe thing. Like this was the authoritative Masonic encyclopedia. And so this was an excerpt I pulled from it. It says, born in Nuremberg, he mystically symbolic copper plates are, his mystically symbolic copper plates are particularly interesting and significant. The most important from a Masonic point of view is probably one entitled Melancholy, in which is seen an exposition of medieval Freemasonry, which suggests that Dürer was familiar with the fraternity of his time, possibly associated with the Nuremberg Lodge, and may have been a member of it. See American Freemason, November 1911, page 21. So there's a source for it there. A closer examination of his engraving Melancholy will show very clearly that he is enforcing the ethical doctrines of Freemasonry by conventional symbolic formulas. So they're basically saying that, again, even though this was like 200 years before the formal establishment of Freemasonry, you have this Masonic Rosicrucian current that was present in the time of the Reformation in Germany, where they were, at the very least, appropriating this Masonic symbology and these Masonic allegories and giving, as it says here, an exposition of medieval Freemasonry. So like, what even is medieval Freemasonry, right? This is alluding to the fact that like this was a very long, centuries long transmission that occurred, and it's very difficult to get like an accurate, to pinpoint like where this originated, because we, in terms of history, when you look at the history, you're just looking at the formal establishment. So you look at 1717, that's when we have documented proof that there was a visible institution of Freemasonry. You have the rites, you have the lodges, right? Like this is when it officially formed and became more, at least in the historic sense, exoteric, right? It became more known that there was this secret society. But what these revisionist historians are saying is that actually when it comes to both Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism, it's something similar to like maybe, you know, Hermeticism or something, right? Where it kind of had like this revival or something and it kind of took on a new form, something along those lines. And you could even say that like this even happened with like Kabbalah as well, where you have like a more formal establishment like through the Renaissance of like now you can accurately say historically that there was in fact Kabbalistic influence that came in during this time. But what about before that? How did it get there? And that's kind of what led me down this whole rabbit hole to begin with, was like that book. Sorry, am I showing the? Okay, yeah. That book. What is it called? Kabbalah and the Founding of America. I read that and I was like, okay, I need to know how this got here. How did these Puritans adopt these Kabbalistic ideas and bring them to America in the first place? That was the question I had that led me down this path. So like I said, you know, you see this in history, like you can see verifiably that there's these influences. How did they get there? How far back did they go? There's some truth to this, Justin. Saint Irenaeus, I mean, you can just, if you want to understand Kabbalah, at least like the prior to Lurianic Kabbalah, like the more, medieval version of it, I would say you can get a very accurate understanding of it by reading Saint Irenaeus against the Gnostics. His whole polemic against Valentinian Gnosticism is basically it's the same metaphysical framework as Kabbalah. There's even Gershom Scholem talks about this, and I know that it's debated among Jewish Kabbalistic scholars, but because I think Moshe Idel takes the opposite view, but Scholem is literally the godfather of the academic study of modern Kabbalah, right? So he is an authoritative voice that argues that there is a direct kind of parallel correlation between ancient pagan Gnosticism and Kabbalah. So you can, you can't, people are always asking me where can I read Orthodox works on that are addressing the Kabbalistic heresy, and I just tell them read Saint Irenaeus. This is an ancient, first, second century thing. I mean, I think I posted this the other day, or maybe last week or something. Let's see how far back it is. Shouldn't be that far back. I may have deleted it. I am known to delete posts. Yeah, I don't think it's here anyway. It's probably on the Telegram, but I did post something about how there was an influence of Jewish mysticism in the first century that was addressed by some of the early Christians. I forget exactly what it was. I read it in the Orthodox Bible and Church Fathers book. Let me see if I can pull that up. I'm just remembering now that I posted it somewhere. Yeah, right here. Switch screens, and thank you for the $5. I'll read that comment in a sec here. Where is it? Okay, let me pull it up here. Sorry. Why can't I see it? My bad. Sorry, guys. One sec here. I can't show my Telegram for some. Oh, here. This is why. Okay, let's see. I'll just read it. I don't have to show it. I'll just read it to you guys, whatever. It says, so this is from G.B. Stevens on notes on Romans. I think this is a Protestant scholar, by the way. So he says, in Rome also there were those who, either within or in contact with the church, made divisions and perverted the true Christian teaching. And the epistle to the Romans deals to only, okay, so it's actually St. Paul he's talking about. The epistle to the Romans deals only in small extent directly with these persons. Galatians is a letter on similar lines, but in more polemic in character. In Colossae and perhaps in Ephesus, there was also a Judeo-Gnostic theosophy which threatened the Christian faith of the people. The Roman church was probably predominantly Gentile, trained in the Pauline gospel. These continued warnings imitate, I'm sorry, I can't, it's like really small, imitate the presence of Judaizing heretics. So what he's talking about is like in the Paul's letter to the Galatians, he's actually addressing Gentile Christians who had adopted these, like, you know, essentially Kabbalistic ideas, these Jewish Gnosticism. So I thought that was interesting. Just a side note there. So thank you for the $5 Zinfidel. Based Zinfidel, our Zin warriors checking in here. Keller mentions in another article that these are proto-Masonic lodges. Oh, okay. This is, are you the guy that sent me this stuff? Thank you if that's you, man. I really appreciated all the work you did. Protestants use Masonry lodge organizations to hide from Catholic persecutions. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that's you if you're familiar with Keller. I haven't encountered many people who had read this text. Yeah. So he does. Yeah. He is arguing essentially that these are proto-Masonic lodges. So I don't know do I have any more here? So yeah, this is also from Norbert Homuth, who says, nevertheless, well, this is my kind of paraphrasing of it, but to embrace his new revolutionary identity, Luther even changed his name from Luder. So his original last name was Luder to Luther, which is a derivation of Eleutheros, meaning liberator. As to the title Liberator, Homuth suggested Luther was a slave to the leader of the Nuremberg Lodge. So that would be Stoppids, the alleged, Rosicrucian leader of the lodge. Luther was a slave to him, and he referenced one of Luther's many letters to Stoppids in which he lamented, "You leave me too much because of you. I felt like a weaned child about his mother. I cried bitterly." Now, I even looked up. I don't like to take for granted sources like this that are citing a primary source. So I looked up the primary source myself. This is directly from Luther's Table Talk. And I cite it here. Hopefully. Oh, maybe not. I can't. Oops. Let me just go down the footnotes. It's not letting me actually click them. So that was 16. I think these are out of order, but yeah, here. I think this is... Not that it matters, but... It's this one here, yeah. William Hazlitt, 1872, Table Talk of Martin Luther. So I went and looked up that primary source just to make sure. I got to fix the footnotes there, but yeah. And then it says this spiritual bond allowed Stoppids to guide Luther towards revolution, as evidenced in a Table Talk documented in 15. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. It's taking me to the editing of the article. I can't click anything here, apparently. the spiritual bond allowed Stoppens to guide Luther towards revolution. Okay, a table talk where Luther accused Tetzel and Stoppens of driving him against the Pope. And so by the time Luther recognized the Kabbalistic influence of the Nuremberg Lodge, the damage had already been done, as Helmuth points out. Even if Luther broke with the Lodge system in 1529 because he correctly recognized the Jewish and Kabbalistic background as the emancipation movement of Judaism, see his hate speeches against the Jews. So he's talking about, on the Jews and their lies, I would assume there. This no longer had any influence on the further course of events. It was too late then because the work of division of the church was already successfully completed. And so there, I'm referencing Luther's citation here where he calls the mysteries of Scripture as true Kabbalah, right? And so I did, I've talked plenty about this. I'm at risk of being redundant. I won't go too much into this, but there is nuance to this, right? He's not just like, this isn't a smoking gun. I try to make that clear, that this is not a smoking gun to say, there it is. He said Kabbalah. He wrote the word Kabbalah and referenced Scripture as true Kabbalah, Luther in his own words. That means he was a Kabbalist, right? That's not what I'm arguing. What I argue instead is that this was like, he was recognizing that there was such a prominent influence of Kabbalah that even his Christian readers would have understood what he was saying here. So like he's referring to the mysteries of Scripture. Like what, there's a context to be aware of here, is that what he's saying about the mysteries of Scripture being true Kabbalah is he's alluding to the Kabbalistic hermeneutics that were prominent at the time, where they were using these Jewish mystical interpretations of the Old Testament to understand it better. At least they thought. And so what Luther's saying is that actually, like, the mysteries of Scripture are revealed in the Scriptures, right? Like he's kind of, this is more of like a sola scriptura reference, I would imagine here. So I do, I don't know if I actually elucidated upon that here, but I have in my discussions on this. So anyway, I'm going to get back to Jay here. I like I said, I'm making a whole, this could probably be a whole stream out of a very short snippet here.
Dame Frances Yates called Rosicrucian Enlightenment. She actually argues that the Enlightenment itself was heavily influenced by Rosicrucian ideology. So they were Neoplatonists, they were into magic, alchemy, so they were really interested in the idea of transmuting metals, into the Philosopher's Stone, which some people thought was a real thing you could do, and others thought, well, that's just an allegory for how to undergo transformation into your better self or to become God in a literal sense, not in the sense of Orthodox theology, but so all of these, there's sort of different strains and strands
but basically
in the Hermetic world.
Witchcraft.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Huh.
A form of it. But again, that's all very diverse. I think in the case of John Dee, for example, he's the first 007. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, so the 007, which is two balls and a cane, which is Tubal Cain, that's how John Dee would sign his secret letters to the Queen, because he was one of the influences on James Bond. So that's where we get 007 from. That's and Ian Fleming consciously took that from John Dee. But my thesis, and other people think this as well, is that when he created this sort of magical angel language that he called Enochian after Enoch, it was just a way to do spy codes and ciphers. He might have actually done some rituals, but it was also very useful as a tool for sending messages to Elizabeth that other people couldn't decode.
Inflation.
Yeah, and that's I did write on John Dee a little bit in the follow-up to this. I'm afraid to click around here now. You can see that here. So here's John Dee. And I actually pulled this from Frances Yates, as Jay was referencing there. how according to Yates, I don't know if it's been so long since I looked at this. I don't know if I referenced this here. Yeah. Yates argued that another key influence parallel to Dee's esoteric plan to reform the New World into utopian Protestant hegemony was Francis Bacon. So she argues that between Dee and Bacon, they were essentially like the founders of the modern world. And that's because, so you had Dee, who kind of came up with this mystical blueprint, and then Francis Bacon kind of established the architecture of what would become the Masonic network through his right here in his Solomon's House. So this was posthumously published as the why am I not referencing it here? Yeah, the New Atlantis, which this is a woodcut depiction. There's also some like transhumanist stuff in here. Like you see a man with wings flying around. I think he kind of envisioned like submarines, like underwater machines and things like that. So it's kind of like this techno utopia, which he envisioned for America. So I think I mentioned that here. But this was published years after Andre's description of the Republic of Christianopolis. That was his one of his like Rosicrucian writings. And so there's like speculation that Bacon actually had direct, like either he was like one of the anonymous contributors to the some of the early Rosicrucian writings, or he at least directly influenced the writings of them. Bacon's utopian novel New Atlantis envisioned a clandestine Christian institution called Solomon's House, an invisible college comprised of illuminated Rosicrucians who ruled the land with advanced scientific knowledge. So again, Solomon's House, obviously, like, you know, the name Solomon is there. It's the, you know, the Masonic temple is kind of depicted as the Solomon's Temple. The whole institution of Freemasonry is based on rebuilding Solomon's Temple, right? And here it says, yeah, the Manly P. Hall actually wrote about this, how he thought that Bacon's, I don't know if he actually was citing Bacon saying this, but he nevertheless envisioned that America was embodied by Bacon's utopian ideal of a new Atlantis and the Rosicrucian plan to liberate Europe, guided by the French and American revolutions, which is a whole other rabbit hole. How there was like, I think I have some work on this too, about how there was like a Judaic influence of the American Revolution. So I'm just going to check. I'm not going down this rabbit hole. I just want to refresh my memory here. But yeah, I think Horowitz wrote about that. Who was it? Yeah, I have a couple writings I know for sure that go into that if you're interested. A good reason to join the forum that I just have been spending all this time on, because this is kind of like a place where I'm going to be dumping larger collections of like my library, all the digital reference materials that I have, that, you know, aren't even worth uploading one of them. It's like I have these entire libraries. So I came up with like this kind of like this whole system for us to share the files and spread them around and stuff. Anyway, I don't know if he's, I think that might've been all he's, let's see. I don't know if he said any more here that I want to touch on.
So in the Orthodox tradition,
yeah, so this is just about Orthodoxy. What are icons? So yeah, I think that was about it. Like I said, I'm not going to cover this whole thing. There's plenty of commentary on this already. But I will look at some of the reactions. So let me see. I think I had some bookmarked. Oh, yeah. So that reminds me, actually, before I get into this, Jay's talking about espionage here, and that does play a big role later in right here in the Jews being readmitted into England after their 400-year expulsion. So you can see here that, again, I'm a little rusty on this because I haven't looked at it in a while. And all of this, by the way, is like there's this strong current like driving all of this, which is apocalyptic anxiety. So that is a theme that runs throughout this transmission. And that's a little bit more on what the second part of my article series is about. And I'll be, by the way, since it's been taking me so long to write this, hopefully what will be a book on this, I decided I'm going to be releasing the chapters as I finish them as their own article. So if you're not subscribed on the Reversion on Substack already, you're going to want to be when I start dripping out those articles. I have at least 2 that are in the final phases of revising that I hope to be publishing in the coming couple months, hopefully. Anyway, so you can see here, where is it? Yeah, so you also had, all of these Jews that were fleeing the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal at the time, right? So a lot of cross-pollination between the Protestant and Jewish populations. And so the Jewish community was thriving in the 17th century. Amsterdam even became known as the Dutch Jerusalem, attracting hordes of conversos who found refuge in maintaining their Jewish identity after fleeing persecution. And so in England, where is it that I'm trying to... Yeah, here. Was it? Yeah, down here. So this is about Cromwell. It's saying that Cromwell later terminated Parliament and the Commonwealth in 1653 and appointed himself as Lord Protector in what English utopian novelist Samuel Butler regarded as a Rosicrucian circle. And so you had this Rabbi Manasseh ben Israel, who was part of this, like spy network, essentially. And one of the key figures here was John Dury, who was a Moravian bishop, he was a minister, and then you had another Moravian bishop, John Amos Comenius, who I believe was also a Rosicrucian, if I'm not mistaken, and Samuel Hartlib, who was known as the great intelligencer of Europe. So he was like the 007 of his time, like an actual spy. And they formed this Baconian-style invisible college that became known as the Hartlib Circle. Hartlib was like on this mission through this network to basically uncover all of the knowledge in the world. So like he was kind of, in a sense, like building an internet, like building his own internet or something like that, like a precursor to it. This extensive network was revealed in the recent discovery of an archive containing over 25,000 papers Hartlib amassed in an effort to record all human knowledge and make it universally available for the education of all mankind. And the Hartlib network reached from New England to Western Europe and included Protestant poet John Milton, the author of Paradise Lost, and John Winthrop, a Puritan Kabbalist leader in the founding of the Massachusetts Bay Colony and a follower of John Dee. And John Milton, by the way, if you've ever seen his artwork, there's like...
Neil Tempest donated $5.
Oh, thank you, Neil Tempest. Thank you, man. No comment. I appreciate the generous $5 with no comment there. Thank you, man. I don't know why the image... Well, yeah, do it on Google. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of a different guy. These are all just yeah, I'm thinking of a... was it... not Robert Frost. Yeah, there was an I forget the guy's name. There was an artist who was like in that circle who, if you ever see his artwork, it's like very esoteric, very influential American artist. I just blanking on his name. So anyway, yeah, let's get back to the crash outs here. So just going through some of the comments I saw, and a lot of these were, this one didn't get ratioed, but a lot of these were, effectively ratioed. So this was the viral clip going around. It wasn't even all of that stuff I just showed, which you would think would be the more shocking claims. No, it was the stuff about, that Protestants can actually that they're familiar with how to respond. Cause they don't know how to respond to any of this stuff. They just kind of write it off as you're insane or something, right? They don't know how to engage with any of that stuff. But when you talk about, what is Calvinism, some of their beliefs and stuff, that's when they'll try to make these refutations. But they didn't actually, most of the ones I saw, they didn't actually make any refutations. They just said, these are straw men. These are misrepresentations of what we believe, right? Without actually saying what they believe. So that's essentially what we're going to see with these comments. So yeah, he's
antithetical to the first 1,000 years of Christianity, not so much because of those aesthetic or cultural issues. It's also Christologically errant in that the whole idea of what salvation is ultimately one's legal standing in terms of what's called justification by faith alone or penal substitutionary atonement. This idea that you're justified by God through a sort of notional acceptance of a set of ideas, and then God's attitude towards you changes. So it's dispositional, but it's not focused on an actual ontological change in the person. Orthodox theology is very different. God's disposition is based not on purely a legal stance, but on your actual ontological change. So a metaphysical change in you versus a dispositional attitude. So maybe we don't get too, Calvinism.
So that's, they're commenting on this and just saying that's a straw man. But so how? Notice how they won't say how. They're just saying what it isn't. They're negating his definition. And so you're going to see this with, if you listen to Jay Dyer on Tucker and you still think Eastern Orthodoxy is a valid option, you are cooked, literally. Okay, how? What do you mean? Because that made Protestantism look bad, not Orthodoxy. You had Tucker, who was supposedly a Protestant himself, platforming someone like Jay and critiquing the Protestant worldview, and with little to no pushback. I mean, basically no pushback. Here you have Five Solas, one of the infamous Prot Slop posters. If you have to lie about Protestantism in an attempt to make it look bad, that tells you everything you need to know. If you want to make Eastern Orthodoxy look bad, all you have to do is tell the truth about it. Actually, this is in itself a lie, because all these people do is lie about what we believe. And they don't tell you, a lot of these guys, I don't know about this account in particular. I think he just posts memes and stuff. It's all meme slop. Yeah, it's all just meme slop. These guys don't even tell you what they believe. So how do we even know what they believe? But anyway, all these guys do is lie about orthodoxy. And we constantly correct them, and they don't accept it. So they have their own narrative of what orthodoxy is, and this guy's literally doing exactly what he's claiming Jay's doing here. This guy does this all the time. But notice again how they don't tell you how he's wrong. Another one, yeah, this guy Calvin too. This guy's commented on my stuff before. Dead religion is stupid. This guy proves it. Big bowl of theological idiocy. How? None of them are saying how. Why is he wrong? Another one. Okay, just saying his understanding of Calvinism is wrong. Okay, these are again all very extremely low tier, low IQ, just loud voices on Twitter. They're nobody to even bother engaging with, especially this guy Alton. This guy is the face of orthodoxy. Okay, Jay's not the face of orthodox. This is how online these guys are. These guys are so extremely online that they think that Jay Dyer is the face of orthodoxy. Not any of our saints, not our patriarchs, not like St. John Chrysostom or something, or Christ. Jay Dyer is the face of orthodoxy. This is how extremely online these people are. It's so insane. You really have to be desperate if Jay Dyer is a spokesperson for your church. He's not. He's not a spokesperson for our church. And I don't think he even claims to be. It's just so stupid. The Orthodox Church is cooked and they can't even... How? All this guy does is talk about orthodoxy. But we're cooked. Okay. Apparently, Jay Dyer presented public slanders and misrepresentations of the Reformed view on soteriology on the recent podcast. And it got it got nearly 500,000 views and misrepresented Calvinism. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Intellectual honesty takes a back seat with these people. Okay, but that doesn't apply when you talk about orthodoxy, right? So more double standards. They don't want to give us the same courtesy as they're demanding that, we give them, and that's not to say that these views are being misrepresented. It's just like, okay, notice how none of them are saying what they actually believe. So how do you expect people to frame your particular understanding of Calvinism the way that you want them to if we don't know what you believe? You're not saying it. And who even are you? I mean, this is the whole problem, right? It's like you can't even criticize Protestantism because it's like completely, it's anarchy. Like it's spiritual anarchy. There's no universal adherence to like any of these doctrines, right? There's no universal authority to enforce the doctrines. If you go outside of them, what happens? Nothing. You just have your own branch, your own church. You are the leader of that, implementation of that version of the theology or whatever, right? There's no universal authority to any of it. So it's almost like the same thing you see with Judaism, right? How like you can't criticize Judaism because, you don't understand it. Like your criticism of Judaism is not my understanding of it, right? So like this is the same logic that they leverage against anyone that criticizes Protestantism. It's like, well, it's a straw man because it's not what I in particular believe about my version of Protestantism, right? So this is the same thing you'll see from all these guys. They're all essentially saying that Jay misrepresented Protestantism because it wasn't their particular understanding of it. So you can't win with these people because you can't even really, criticize their religion in a way that is applied to all of them. But they think that they can with ours, right? They think that, if you just come up with this like, this like devastating blow to orthodoxy, the entire tradition is defeated, right? And same with Catholicism. And it's like, that's actually saying more about the Catholic and Orthodox faith because it's, you're admitting that there is a universal application of the dogmas, which you guys don't have. The Protestants don't have that. So like that's not a good thing that they don't have that. You can argue over which implementation of those like universal doctrines is correct, but the Protestants don't even have that. So like, how can you even leverage any kind of criticisms on them? They're immune to it, apparently. They need us to be wrong to justify their rebellion. Yeah, exactly. My ancestors were Orthodox. Yeah, all of ours were. If you're European, in a sense, all of your ancestors were Orthodox prior to the schism. I say that all the time because I'm Italian. And, people ask me, they're like, that's weird. You're Italian. Why are you Orthodox? Like you should be Catholic. Well, it's like, well, my ancestors before the schism, they were Orthodox. They were the real Catholics. we was real Catholics, but really though. It's shape shifting, exactly. Like I said, same as Judaism. It's like there's so many sects that you can't actually criticize it in a way that it applies to the entire religion. So you need to constantly, I kind of do this to a certain extent. You can try this, but it's almost like it's almost like a pointless endeavor. That I always try, like when I'm like criticizing Protestantism, I always try to frame it with like, I'm talking about this specific kind, but that's not even good enough. So it's like, you might as well not even bother with that. It's not good enough to do that. It is important, like to these guys' credit, if they have any credit, it is important to try to like accurately frame their beliefs. But again, how can you do that if it's all individualistic? Like the best way you can try to do that in an honest way is to engage with the reformers' ideas, or the founders of the, with Baptists, it would be John Smith or whatever his name was. With Wesleyans, you can talk about Wesley's theology or whatever, but it's like, you have to go to the source with it. And then even if you do that, they just can get out of that because they'll say, well, these guys weren't infallible and they were wrong about some things. So we don't, take their teachings as dogma, right? So like they even get out of that. They weasel themselves out of that too. So you can't even do that. I mean, I talk about all the time how I post this image endlessly. I know I'll be able to find. Yeah, look at how many times I post this. Because it's like they don't have a response to this. All three of the magisterial reformers maintained an entirely Roman Catholic Mariology. They did not divert from it. Like to my knowledge, at least based on like these quotes and other excerpts I've read, like the Reformation had nothing to do with Mariology. They weren't trying to reform Mariology. So they maintained the same Mariology that they had as Catholics. So look what they're saying here. Luther saying that she was an ever virgin, that she was without sin. Calvin was condemning Helvidius and saying that Mary had several sons. And then even Zwingli, the Judaizer, is saying, I firmly believe that Mary, according to the words of the Gospels, was a pure virgin brought forth to us, the Son of God, in childbirth, and after childbirth forever remained pure, intact virgin. And then he venerates her. He says, I esteem immensely the Mother of God, the ever chaste, immaculate Virgin Mary. The Protestants of today would call this idolatry. They would say that he is that Zwingli was worshiping Mary. He would call it, they would call it Mary worship. But there it is from all three of them. So the rare occasions I have seen Protestants respond to this, they'll just say exactly what I said. They'll just be like, well, they were wrong about some stuff. We have it right now, finally. 2,000 years later, we finally, like me as an individual reading the Bible today, understand it as a, quote, biblical Christian, as a Bible-believing, born-again Christian. I actually understand better than the reformers even. Was there I missed something. Was there a donation or something? I heard a noise, but I don't see anything. Thank you, whoever that was. Thank you for whatever that notification was that I'm too retarded to see. But yeah, so there you go. I mean, this is a good example, I think, of like how you can see that, like, this is why I call Protestantism an ongoing revolution. It's semper reformanda at all points, right? It's like constantly reforming, even now reforming what the reformers themselves believed. And it's in perpetual protest to the Catholic Church. So what changed here? what changed for this, not for this Mariology right here, for this Roman Catholic Mariology to not be like, to be largely rejected almost as like a primary objection against Catholicism by modern Protestants? What happened? What changed? Well, you know, St. John Maximovich writes about this in the Veneration of the Theotokos, about how there was a shift where post-schism, I believe he attributes it to, Thomism. I forget exactly. I could probably pull it up, but he writes about how, like, basically, when the Catholic innovation of the Immaculate Conception started to take hold, I believe it was Aquinas who opposed it, if I'm not mistaken. I'm a little rusty on this. I read it a while ago. And that became, now a dogma, but like the point was like that, that the Roman Catholics did start to innovate in their Mariology and elevate Mary to a status that she had not occupied prior. And so the modern Protestants started to rebel against that. So it's just like their entire existence as Protestants are dependent on what Rome is doing. The end goal of Protestantism is that one guy somewhere eventually will whittle away everything that's wrong in every church and have the true faith personally to himself. Yeah, it's tikkun olam. It's like, it's world repair. Every Protestant is doing world repair. My take on that is, and I've talked about this before, but really the telos of Protestantism is AI slop. Let me unpack that. Let me give you a visual to that, if I can find this. I have to look up my own tweets to frame this. I know I talk about the printing press in relation to the, oh no, not that. There was a Yuval Harari clip. It's in my intro. I should be able to find this, where he's talking about, let me see if I can just find it. I know I've played this before too. I might be spelling his name wrong. Yeah, here it is. So he says here, anything made of words will be taken over by AI, including book-based religions. What happens to a religion of the book when the greatest expert on the holy book is an AI? This will explain. I'll let Yuval Harari explain what I mean here. This is the death of Protestantism.
AI already thinks better than many of us. Therefore, anything made of words will be taken over by AI. If laws are made of words, then AI will take over the legal system. If books are just combinations of words, then AI will take over books. If religion is built from words, then AI will take over religion. This is particularly true of religions based on books, like Islam, Christianity, or Judaism.
And by Christianity, of course, he means Protestantism, because our faith is not based on a book. Okay, it's not based on and dependent upon the invention of the printing press and books existing and literacy rates necessitating a high level.
Judaism calls itself the religion of the book, and it grants ultimate authority not to humans, but to words in books. Humans have authority in Judaism not because of our experiences, but
Yuval's a demented pervert, so who cares? Well, when these innovators behind these technologies speak about their vision for, where they see them going, you should listen. Because whether they can pull it off or not, this is what they want to do. This is what they plan to do with it. So it's not saying that this guy is like, someone who he's not a Protestant theologian or something. Is a Protestant theologian going to talk about like how AI is killing Protestantism? Probably not. A lot of I talk about this all the time, how like Jews have a very worthwhile perspective on Protestantism that should be regarded. And a lot of these historians that covered the Jewish influence of the Reformation are Jewish historians. The Jews are very good at keeping history. You can say what you want. Obviously, I'm no sympathizer of Judaism. I think that's pretty well known. But say what you want. They are very good at keeping a record of history. So, some of the books I mentioned earlier, they were written by Jewish historians. And not all of them are religious, by the way. A lot of them are secular. So do we disregard everything they said just because they're Jewish? It depends what they're talking about. When it comes to history, and maybe you can say like they're exaggerating their influence because they like to talk about how everything's Judaism pollinates everywhere, like it influences everything, right? But when you see that there's Protestant historians, like I said, Philip Schaeffer, who confirm this stuff. Like why do you have some of the most renowned Protestant historians saying the same things? But anyway, when it comes to this, yeah, he is. Yes, he's Novel Harari. You should not care about what Yuval Harari's saying, though. For the same reason, you should pay attention to what Elon Musk is saying about the direction of the religious kind of ideology behind AI, because these guys are telling you that it's a religion. And there's also truth to what he's saying here. Anything that's word-based is consumed by AI. We can see that visually happening. That there's visual evidence of this happening. Go on any social media feed right now and set a timer. And I guarantee you, I would put good money on this, that within a minute you will encounter, if you just scroll, okay, not if you just stop on a piece of content, but if you just scroll for a minute, you're going to encounter AI slop. And dead internet theory is actually becoming more and more true, because more of the internet is being taken over by bots. I think it's somewhere around 60% of the internet, the content on the internet right now is bot generated. And that's accelerating in the rate that it's taking over. So you can actually see that that's happening in real time on any timeline on here. I mean, I could just demonstrate for you in real time here. If I just scroll enough, I'm going to see some AI generated content. It wouldn't take long. Now, my algorithm right now is based on what I'm looking at the moment, which is this Jay Dyer stuff. So I'm seeing a lot of these clips. But that's why. Yeah, you get the point. Okay, there's AI right there. It's even the news now, you can't even tell what in the news is real anymore. So I'm seeing a lot of the same stuff. My algo's kind of cooked right now. But, Instagram's a good example of this. Go on Instagram, go on any kind of video-based content platform, YouTube. There's actual data to show this. I don't have to do a demonstration. Yeah, dead internet theory is true. Practically speaking, most of your interactions will likely be bots. It's factually more bots than people, and they're more elaborate than ever. Yeah. And like, then that's the whole other thing is like, you couldn't even perform that test on yourself because a lot of the stuff you're seeing is AI and you just don't even know it. So like, we're already at that point. And when you know, like the reason why I'm saying like, listen to these guys that are like at the forefront of the AI technocracy, and, you know, these accelerationist types, because they understand, you know, they have delusions about what it can do, but they understand technically what it is, because AI is all words. It is literally all word slop. The visuals and everything is just, it's all words, right? So it's like quite literally a word religion that is consuming the previous word religion that has dominated for 500 years, which is Protestantism. So it was born, you know, Protestantism was born out of a technology, which was the printing press. The Protestant religion would not have been possible without Gutenberg's printing press, would not have been possible. And there's academics and scholars that, you know, Protestant scholars as well, who say that as well. And so it wouldn't have been possible. So the Protestant Reformation was born out of technology. 500 years of machine worship got us here. And this is what will effectively kill it. And it's not that it will be a better replacement. It will, you know, arguably be worse, but this is the kind of the conclusion of it. At least that's what I argue. You know, you can see that with like, let me see if I have this text pulled up. Oh yeah. And before I even get into that, I'll show you another example of this. I think I've showed this on the stream before. Maybe I haven't. Is it Eucharist? I remember like keywords and stuff that I post, but not like the whole. This is how I find content. Yeah, the search isn't working well right now. Okay, here we go. So this is a very crucial text for all this. The Printing Press as an Agent of Change by Elizabeth Eisenstein. Huge 2-volume book. One of the best purchases of a rare book that I've made. And then here's the other one I was mentioning earlier, The Reformation of the Image. And this is Joseph Leo Corner calls it the linguistification of the sacred. And he said, this is actually a quote from him. He says, it transformed the word religion into a world religion. And this is actually from the same book. Before the Reformation, the sacred had been constituted by material, social, and institutional divisions that cordoned it off from ordinary life. With the advent of a word religion, which linguistified the sacred as a set of belief statements, the contents of faith were open to everyone, always and everywhere. And so here, this is another logical conclusion of this word religion, is that you have a literal textual Eucharist.
Turn the book of Proverbs. Turn the book of Proverbs for me.
And before I play this, like I'm not saying that this was posted on the Protestia account, right? Like this is a Protestant, I think they're IFB Baptist. So these are Protestants, right? That they think they're exposing all these abuses in the various Protestant evangelical sects and whatnot. So my point in playing this is that this is a logical conclusion of Protestantism in itself. It's not like, oh, it's just like some wacky evangelical cult that's doing something weird. It's like, this is what this logic leads to. I'm not saying that all Protestants like do this, right?
You're not going to believe what I'm about to do. But it happened 15 years ago in Brazil. Hold this.
So he's ripping a page out of the Bible. Everyone's laughing.
Eat it.
Eat it.
When you eat this, the power of God is going to go inside of you.
Okay. They're words,
Take
bro.
your time.
They're words on a page. It's just text on a
I'll
page.
raise the music up. Thank you.
So literally a textual Eucharist, right?
Come on, come on, come on, come on. Yeah, swallow it.
Pause. Swallow it. Okay, blows on his face for some reason, like that does anything. Anyway, absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Obviously, that's why it's here. But, you know, when you elevate the text itself, the book, the words in the book, in the textual form to this sacramental status, like Kroner argues, this makes sense, actually. As absurd as this is, this makes sense. If you were to just like explain Protestantism to an alien, like this would, you could definitely make this a logical conclusion of it. Yeah, it's a parody. Yeah, it's a mockery.
At I Ask Dumb Questions,
Hey.
donated $19.99.
There he is. What's up, man?
Super chat. A Westgate stream.
Yeah, I did a last minute. I just kind of like suddenly decided, because I'm going to be busy tomorrow, so I was like, I need to get another stream in. So didn't really have a whole lot prepared, but I figured I could at least talk about some of this stuff. But thank you for the $20, man. Always appreciate the very generous support. Yeah, Ortho Bell says, I stay off Facebook now. I'm generally in EO chats and just read X. Yeah, I mean, that's another reason I've been really focused on building out this forum, because I wanted to make an escape from the centralized communication apps that we rely on for discussions, within our space. Orthodoxy in particular, like, not that this is this is not going to be an extension of Twitter where there's all these apologetic debates and stuff. Like, I have a clear purpose for this, but I also want it to be just like somewhere we can come and like gather a bunch of like-minded people and not be on Discord or Facebook or Twitter, or, Instagram, or any of these cesspools of algorithmic chaos, right? Where you have to like parse through all this slop just to get anything decent that relates to what you're there for. And so this is a more, it's interesting because, I call my publication the Reversion, and it ended up, kind of taking on this like new meaning with in regards to technology. Like, it's not what I created it for, but like this in a sense is a reversion back to the way that we used to hold discussions online before social media. This is what it looked like. I mean, this is a modern kind of UI on it, but they were message boards. You'd click on a discussion, and there would be a whole thread. There's a whole discussion thread here. And these are archival, right? So like you could, something happens, the VPS provider censors you or shuts you down for whatever reason. You just take this whole thing and you go to the next server. You can kind of it's portable in a sense that you can like move it somewhere else. And you can also archive this whole thing. So even if this site goes down forever, it'll be archived, and you'll have these discussions if they are, worth archiving eventually. You can't really do that with a social media feed. Like, you can, I guess, export your Twitter post like for your own profile, but like no one's looking for that. Like, no one's like, scanning Twitter archives of like particular people's tweets, right? It's all just like stuff that's in the now. So these would, ideally be more valuable discussions, more timeless discussions, things that are pertaining to like localizing preparations for being more independent independent in terms of like digital sovereignty, and like also organizing for local communities, Orthodox communities, parishes, monasteries, things like that, getting them set up with a parallel network outside of the control of the centralization of the internet, the increasingly centralized control, all the AI slop, all the bot takeovers and stuff, like, because the internet is kind of like already dead, and it's like just dying its last breaths now, I guess. So, unfortunately, this is something people don't want to confront, this reality that because we're looking at, like, especially within Orthodoxy, we're like, oh, everything's going great. It's growing, right? There's like, we're ratioing everybody on Twitter. Like there's all this growth. Like there's this obvious, like, surge in growth in the West with people coming to Orthodox parishes that are learning about it online. That is true. And I love to see it as much as anyone. But don't let that fool you in the sense that that's going to stay the way that it is. So, like, we have to do something to prepare for where the internet's going, because it's not going in a direction that is going to benefit anyone that's making human content. We're already outnumbered. Like, we're already losing the bot war. Like, we've already lost it, and there's no way we can change anything with it. How do you stop AI slop from overtaking anything? Twitter's even trying to do that. I saw something that, and I don't even know how true this is, but let me see if I can even find this. I saw this a few weeks ago. I wouldn't even know what to search, but I saw something where they're trying to, like, write into the code base, like, a way to prevent AI from, like, being more prominent on people's feeds. And it's like, it's just a constant battle. I mean, it is an AI platform. Like, what do you expect? You'd be surprised how many people use the search bar to look for Mathieu Pajot's old tweet. Yeah, well, that's a good exception, because they're text based. They're like they're long threads, right? Like, why do people look for that in particular? Because he's sharing very interesting, unique ideas that can only be fat. Like, he was only sharing those particular ideas on his feed, and he was writing them out as threads. So, like, threads. I mean, even threads, like, people don't really, like, read threads anymore. Like, they're too long for Twitter. But yeah, like that's a good example, but I would say it's an exception to the rule. I expect to go dark at some point. Yeah. Well, so that's what this is for. It's like, how do you, what do you do about that? Like, what can we do right now to prepare? There's all these great resources. Let's say the stuff that's driving people into the church, let's take that with us offline. Let's start to create offline copies of these resources and distribute them to less tech savvy people, so that they can use them without having access to the internet, that they can still access these important things. One thing I always refer to is the Orthodox Info website, which I have an offline copy of that I will be, this is really cringe here, but, this is just an invaluable resource. We can't afford to lose this resource. This is one of many. You can see, like, even these websites are really old, right? Because this one was built in 1996, maintained by one guy for 30 years. It's not even HTTPS, so it's not a secure site. Okay, so, like, anything can happen at any point. This could be gone. There is a mirror of it. OrthodoxInfo.xyz. So a guy I'm talking to actually is a follower. He's on the Telegram. I didn't know that until today. So shout out to him. But he forked the website and made a mirror of it. So, like, that kind of stuff is good. We need to do that. But we also need offline copies. The Orthodox Wiki, another one. We cannot lose this website. See how slow it is? But yeah, it's got over 5,000 articles. We just can't lose this, We can't rely on the internet to serve this to us. So I made an offline copy of this too. So like that's what we'll be doing on one of the things we'll be doing as a community on the forum. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but I'm trying to encourage people start at least identifying sources, and then people who know how to do the archiving can do it. I was planning to actually do a whole stream about this kind of stuff, so maybe I'll do that next for the next stream. Yeah, as a former Prot, converting to Orthodoxy feels like fleeing to the hills before the destruction comes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like eating itself alive, like the internet. It'll be online attention monopolies through AI bots. Essentially, one guy can hoard AI bots and create content at unprecedented rates and flood the market faster than someone doing it naturally. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening, and that's why it's a losing battle. We're not going to win. The internet's cooked. So nobody wants to admit that the internet's cooked, because it's still here. We're still using it. Everyone's still scrolling. We're still getting our dopamine hits from the internet, and like I said, you're seeing all this great, like, it's from the Orthodox perspective. I know it's a niche kind of community, but it is growing online, which is good. But that's not going to stay that way. I'm not saying like this is going to happen in the near future, but it looks like everything is succumbing to this. I don't see why Orthodoxy is an exception to this, because everything's being consumed by AI slop. I mean, Orthodox content is too. So this is just the inevitable path that this is going down, and that there's no stopping it. So there's going to be a point where you're going to have to decide, like, okay, time to start retreating, start packing our bags. And what do you mean by pack our bags? Well, let's take what's good that we can salvage, just take it with us. You can literally create an offline internet if you just get enough of these websites onto your local machine, and just have, like, you don't need the internet at all. Like, you just take everything that's good from it. Not everything. It's not going to be everything, obviously. There's only as much space as you have, but careful curation. You can have a lot. I mean, look, between this site, right, there's 5,000 articles here, and Orthodox Info, this has 3,000 printed pages, 850 articles. It's like, you wouldn't even have time. The amount of time the average person spends on the internet, that would, like, you probably wouldn't even be able to read all this stuff, like, in within a year or something, right? Like, you have plenty of material. You have plenty of material to take with you if you just don't do all the consuming that we do with the scrolling. So, so that's kind of like the forum is not it's not a solution to this stuff, because it has the same it faces the same danger, because it's online. Like, this is a forum on the internet. It's not under the control of a company. It's under my control. So it's centralized in the sense that it's my code base. It's on servers that I only have access to, right? It's like, but I want to decentralize it. I want people to, pull their own copies and stuff. It's like, what I have envisioned for this goes beyond the forum. So, this, for example, is I showed this earlier at the beginning of the stream. It's a 15 gigabyte fine art gallery of all these super high res paintings that you'd have to pay for these, basically, to get the high res versions of these from, like, these archival websites that are like these fine art websites and stuff. There's 1,817 of these. This is just the samples. There's a ton of these awesome, incredible paintings that most of these I have never seen before. It's like a digital art gallery. Could look at this for hours. But it's 15 gigs. It's like, where do I share this? You know, I could put it on like a Google Drive or something, but then it's on Google. And so I did this with a torrent. So I shared the torrent, and I'm encouraging people in the community to become a node and seed it, so that the more people we have seeding it, like that's not a permanent solution either, but the point is to just have it have these large files or these large collections of books, libraries, websites, right? That stuff's hard to share. Like you can't just go and post that on Discord or on your Twitter feed, right? Like you need some kind of way to do that in a decentralized way to post, to share large files. And so, you can do that through BitTorrent. You can do it through IPFS. That's a little bit more technical. So for right now, I'm just using torrents. I believe the telos of the internet is to bring people to holy orthodoxy. I mean, that could be also. That could be. I mean, that is something that's happening. I don't know to what scale that will. I mean, just pray, I guess. Like, I would love to be wrong about this too. By the way, I'm not like I gain no benefit from any of this happening. But and I would love to see this continue, and it is continuing. But I just taking an honest look at it, I don't think this is going, not the growth of orthodoxy, but just the internet, right? The web, the state of the web, it's not going in a good direction. So if there's anything good happening, that is objectively one of the great things happening. But even within that discourse, you can see that there's all these people using AI. Like, actually, I saw one of the responses. Let me see if I can find it. One of the responses to Jay's post, to one of his posts, was an AI generated reply. Was it this one? No. I don't know how to find it, but it was. I saw one guy's tweet was like like you can literally see this M dash thing. Oh, maybe it was this. Now, I will say the M dash isn't always indicative of AI. I still use an M dash in my writing, but I think that it's probably safe to say that more than half the times you see the M dash, it's AI generated, because I think most people don't even know how to make the M dash on their keyboard. So I don't even know. I didn't read this whole thing. I don't know if this is AI, but I think one of these replies was like obviously AI. Now I've shown this before, but this, like, you can see these replies on, I think it was in this video here on this stream, where I talked about a lot of the same stuff I was mentioning tonight. And the rebuttals to this were AI generated. Was it this one? Yeah, here. So this from the Layman Seminary, who is someone LARPing as an Orthodox a Protestant apologist on Twitter, and I guess he found my channel. And he posted he's saying right here that it's a GPT-5 response. Like, he's just telling you as if you need that. But it's like, I'm not replying to that. You just posted AI. That's like not your thoughts. There was another one I'm not going to even remember which one it was. I'm not even remember which one. It was another similar stream where I was covering the same thing. So maybe it was one of these. I don't know. I'm not going to go searching through it, but the longest refutations, if you want to call them that, to my my explanation of this have been AI. They've been AI generated. And I actually really would like to, like, I literally opened up a panel tonight to, like, maybe somebody for once will jump on here and like actually have a discussion with me about this who thinks I'm wrong about everything. I invite you to come on and talk to me about this in particular. But I just can't get people to do that. They won't do it. They just give AI replies. I've been trying to get people to talk about this like in a live discussion for going on 2 years now, and I can't. I just showed, I just showed you tonight, there was like some guy that I thought maybe he would come on. This guy here, who's like complaining that Jay wouldn't talk to him about this, about the Jewish influence of the Reformation. Jay blocked me. He won't talk to me about it. Okay, I will. And here's some proof that I have like academic sources for this. Oh, I've researched this extensively for 20 years. No, you haven't. And he starts going, it just starts crashing out. Okay, cool. Then we can talk about it. Come on, call in. And then he goes, oh, you can call into my show. I'm sorry. Who are you? What show? Why would I call into your show? Who is this guy? You don't even have 1,000 followers. Oh, why would anyone call it? Like, why should I call into your show? I wasn't challenging anyone. You are. And don't you want more people to hear, if you're going to debunk everything I'm saying, don't you want more people to hear it? It's just retarded. But yeah. So anyway, nobody will engage with me on this. And I've speculated why that is the case with this in particular. And I really believe that it's just because like this is not something that they're familiar with, and they don't have they can't engage with this the same way that they do with their apologetics, where it's all debates over scripture and theology. This kind of like goes beyond that, and it's about how their whole religion was birthed from this like cultural milieu, which involved a strong presence of like Hebraic literature that they had to borrow from. They had to learn from rabbis to do these translations. It was born in a technological revolution, right? It was dependent on literacy rates being high enough for people, like for even sola scriptura to make sense, right? So it's kind of like this high level critique that they're not used to responding to. So they kind of don't have they really don't have a response to this. You're getting into like historical and more like ideological framings of their position. It's really, I think, difficult for them to engage with this because they just don't have like all these resources. They can't go on what's that website, Christian Answers. Like they can't go on Christian Answers to find stuff about this, like how to respond. They can't go on Matt Slick's website to find a refutation for this stuff, Yeah, I'm 50 years old. I don't recognize the internet and society that I knew. It is truly, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm unk too. I'm unk status, as they say. Myself, I remember the internet in the 90s. I'm old enough to remember using the internet in the 90s and having to sign on to AOL and like fighting over internet access with my sister, because it was like you had to tie up the phone line and you had one computer per house. So it was like, it's my turn to go on the internet. It was like that. And it is completely unrecognizable. I agree. It is not and even the founder of the internet, what's his name? Tim Berners-Lee, the CERN employee that invented the World Wide Web. He himself said that like he did not anticipate that it would that things would go in this direction, that it would become more centralized. He actually envisioned the opposite, that it would be this like it would remain this increasingly decentralized network of information transfer, and it's like totally the opposite now. It's becoming more and more centralized and more fragile. So even though it looks like it's evolving and it's like we're getting like, more advanced technology that we're consuming on the web, like our experience on the web is getting, seemingly improving. The infrastructure itself is becoming more fragile, and we can't see it. It's like pretty invisible. Like we can't see how that's happening. Yeah, Al Gore. Yeah. Yeah, the internet is a series of tubes. Yeah, I remember that. The internet is a series of tubes, he said. I remember a time when computers took up a whole warehouse and barely did basic math. Yeah. Yeah, is it Moore's law? Which is, I think that's cooked too. Yeah, man, it's like, this is what I mean. It's just like, this is why it's important to not get lost in the discourse. Like, it's fun. I know I'm commenting on the discourse tonight. It's fun while it's here, but, this is all evolving. This is, evolving as we speak, and we have no control over where it's going. And it's, being consumed by bots that aren't even humans that are taking over. Anyway, just scrolling now. I'm just scrolling, but I think I'll probably just wrap it up here. I thought maybe there would be some people that would join. I do have an open panel. If anyone wanted to jump on, I'll just post the link one more time here. And, if anyone wants to hop on and just discuss whatever. Look into Deep Tempest. It's AI deciphering radiation emitted from electronics like HDMI cables. Essentially, it can decipher messages and images through the radiation. Yeah, I believe that. I think I've heard of that Deep Tempest. Like some of the ways in which signals can be transmitted, and the data that's transmitted through those signals, that like the masses have no clue about is actually like nightmare fuel. It's like it'll actually black pill you if you really start to look into this stuff. Yeah, Deep Tempest, eavesdropping on HDMI via SDR and deep learning. Like, I actually get why people don't want to know about this stuff. It's like, it's actually, what can you do besides just go Uncle Ted mode and just unplug everything. Throw all of your, like, even your cables. You can't even have cables, apparently. You can't have cables connected. I mean, I've talked about the printer before. How, like, the printer has, like, this, essentially, like, an invisible ink that sends data to the printer manufacturers so that people know, like, they know if you're, like, printing copyrighted material and things like that. Like, they know what kind of information you're printing on these printers because everything's connected to the internet now. The printers are part of IoT. So, like, yeah, everything that's connected online is transmitting data. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, on top of this, it's becoming like another aspect. I didn't even talk about this, but like another consequence to the slopification of the internet is, let's say that the precedence for the Reformation is true, where, it's like everyone, the literacy rates are high. Everyone can read and like parse the Bible for themselves, and they can come to the same conclusions, right? Let's grant that that's true, as absurd as it is. Well, what about now? What about when literacy rates are they're plummeting because our collective attention spans are decreasing due to the AI slop, and not even the AI slop, even before that, with the algorithmic nature of these social media platforms, where now we won't even engage with a piece of content if it doesn't grab our attention in the first second. There's been studies on this, how human attention span is shorter than a goldfish. Look at this. This was in 2015. And yeah, it's an academic study. It's like whatever, maybe it's some wild like academic study or something, but there's okay, they're busting the myth. Okay, well, the point is, I think we all kind of know that whether that's true or not, like it's less than the goldfish. It's decreasing. Like we're becoming dumber. We're becoming dumber as a collective, right? People can't read anymore. Like they can read in the sense that they can read words, but they're not reading books. Like people generally are not sitting down for even an hour per day to just read like they used to. So that's a thing of the past, right? So what happens to, every individual can just read the Bible and figure it out themselves when no one's really reading anymore. There's no picking up books and just sitting there in silence and not even if you are doing that, it's like your mind is like, you could actually be doing the action of reading and your mind's not comprehending fully what you're reading because you're distracted. You're thinking about something else. Your phone's near you. So you're thinking about what's going on my phone. What kind of current thing am I missing out on? Right. So your mind isn't even present while you're reading. That's a whole other thing, even if you're trying to read. So like this has been detrimental to our, to the collective literacy rates, right? They're not, I would imagine they're not like they were in the 16th century. So the whole thing depends on that, on literacy rates being at a high level, on top of the technology that produces mass print being available. When you think about it that way, it's like kind of absurd. And then, when you look at quotes like this, where is it? I had it pulled up somewhere. What am I looking for? Oh yeah. Okay. It was, what book was this? Oh yeah. It was, Printing Press as the Agent of Change. So let me pull this up here. Look at this quote here. Luther himself described printing as God's highest and extremist act of grace, whereby the business of the gospel is driven forward. It was typical of the Protestant outlook that he also regarded it as the last flame before the extinction of the world. So there you see the apocalypticism I was referring to that drove the eschatology of the Protestants. And you also see basically like this, kind of like an accelerationism. It's kind of like a proto-accelerationism, or like a techno. This is like a techno-optimism, to put it lightly. That God's highest great and extremist act of grace is a technological invention. That's kind of wild. Like it's a machine that was invented in the 17th or the 16th century or 15th century, right? So it's a 15th century technological invention that was God's highest and extremist act of grace. So it wasn't until this invention came about that the business of the gospel could be finally driven forward. And then it's no kind of like coincidence that this was also included, this quote that he also regarded as the last flame before the extinction of the world, because there was this understanding that they're in the last days. And so the printing press comes about in a way of like, it's providential, like this providential manner where finally, now we could mass distribute the Bible to everyone and before the world ends, and they could all, learn the truth of the gospel themselves by just reading it, by reading a book. There's a lot of gold mine quotes in this book, by the way. Highly recommend it. Printing made it possible to dispense with the use of images for mnemonic purposes and thus reinforced iconoclastic tendencies already present among many Christians. In this light, it may seem plausible to suggest that printing fostered a movement from image culture to word culture. Okay, and then here she says, for the first time in human history, a great reading public judged the validity of revolutionary ideas through a mass medium which used the vernacular languages together with the arts of the journalist and the cartoonist. The Reformation was the first religious movement, it has been said, which had the aid of the printing press. So it was quite literally the first religion that was born of print. Before the first Lutheran tract had been written, let alone printed and spread, scholars were being provided with Greek and Hebrew texts, vernacular Bibles in diverse languages, and editions were being placed at the disposal of all. Reuchlin's Rudiments of Hebrew and Erasmus's Greek New Testament were both in Luther's hands before the 95 Theses were composed. This is a good example of what I was talking about earlier, how you can validate the Jewish historians who are writing in great depth about the Jewish influence of the Reformation. You can validate that with what these other scholars are saying. How they're all saying the same thing. There's no, and with this in particular, there's no conflicting history. That Reuchlin, in fact, influenced the Reformation with his Hebrew grammars that he wrote. Reuchlin, who was a Kabbalist, who was like the de facto Christian Kabbalist of his time. So he, that was, they couldn't have really done the Old Testament translations without Reuchlin's Hebrew grammars. And so that was already there. That whole Hebraic infrastructure was already in place and made the Reformation possible. And then you have the printing press on top of that, allowed for this literature to disseminate throughout Europe. And the Protestant Bible translation centers doubled as centers for Hebrew printing and disseminating of the Hebrew text, such as the Zohar, the Talmud, on top of the Bibles that they were printing. So, yeah. So I think I'll wrap it up here, but thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for all the very kind support. And of course, as always, for listening to me just yap about something that I wasn't really, I didn't have much prepared tonight. So I love you guys. I appreciate you all. And I'll see you maybe, actually I may have a really good stream coming up on Friday if I can make it happen. That's all I'll say. I don't want to tease it too much, because if it doesn't happen, I'm going to have to reschedule it and stuff. But that's all I'll say. Just stay tuned. If you're not on the Telegram already, join there. Join the Discord, even though I just did all that yapping about how these platforms need to go. That's
Layman Pundit donated $5.
Oh, thank you, man.
Super chat.
Thank you. Another no comment. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for the $5. Yeah. So, get on what we're using right now to, that's where I at least am making the announcements. The best is going to be, on the, Substack. I don't announce when I go live on there though, but anyway, and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. I never tell people to subscribe. Maybe I should do that more. I got to start shilling my YouTube channel more, but subscribe if you don't already. Like these streams if you do actually like them. Click the thumbs up so you can get it out there so more people see all that stuff that the YouTubers say. Anyway, thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. God bless you all.